Welcome back to the Dialed In podcast. This is episode number 3. I'm Allan Gray, Executive Director of Dial Ventures, a startup studio focused on creating startup companies to help digitize the ag and food system. Today, we're really pleased to have join us Patrick Smith from Loftus Ranches out in the Great Northwest. Again, in full disclosure, as I've done many times already with you, these are guests that I've known for quite some time. So Patrick was a former student in the MSMBA program that I teach in, and he and I have been working together on a number of different things. We've written 2 case studies over time. We've had a competition that we judged together, and maybe on occasion have even tasted some hoppy malted beverages, I think. Would that be fair, Patrick?
Yeah, from time to time.
Patrick, thanks for being here with us today. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to visit with you a little bit, get the rest of the audience to know something about what happens in the Great Northwest, which in some ways I think might be the best kept secret of what happens in agriculture and food, because there's a lot of things happening in the Yakima Valley and all of the Great Northwest with respect to everything from apples to hops and everything in between. So Patrick, why don't we start maybe by just giving us a little bit about your background and the family farm that you were raised on and now are running.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Allan. It's always a pleasure to get to talk to you. So, as Don mentioned, Patrick Smith, I'm CEO of Loftus Ranches here in Yakima, Washington. I'm a 4th-generation hop farmer here in Yakima. So, for those of you that are not familiar with the state of Washington, Yakima is in the south central part of the state. We're about 2 hours east of Seattle and 3 hours west of Spokane. So kind of right in the middle of the state in the rain shadow of the Cascade Mountains. So born and raised on the farm here in Yakima. My great-great-great-grandfather bought this piece of land that I'm sitting on right now in 1920. Then it was my great-grandfather and great-grandmother that planted hops directly south of my office here in 1932. So our family's been growing hops here in the Yakima Valley, continuously since 1932. I was born and raised here, started working on the farm as a young child. Basically being a farmer is all I really ever wanted to do as a kid, and left and after high school and went and studied business at the University of Washington. Spent about 5 years in the finance industry over there before returning home to the farm here in 2009 and entered the MSMBA program that same year. And so, here we are 14 years later, and I was promoted to CEO in February of 2020, so right before the whole world changed. So kind of 3.5-ish years in to kind of run the family farm, and it's a real pleasure and honor, and it's my dream job, and so it's a lot of fun. But our businesses, primary business is hops, but we also grow apples, pears, peppers, alfalfa, a handful of other crops. We are vertically integrated in hops and apples. So on the hop side, we through partnerships with other farmers in the region, we're vertically integrated from genetics all the way up through actually brewing. My younger siblings opened a craft brewery on the farm April of 2013. So Bellbreaker Brewing turned 10 this year, distributed throughout the Pacific Northwest, but not officially distributed outside Washington, Oregon, and Idaho at this point. In apples, we are also vertically integrated through partnerships with other apple growers in the region through packing and sales. So kind of touch a lot of different parts of those value chains. So get to can see a lot of different stuff than you guys deal with in the Midwest and the I-states there. But it's still farming.
Yep. Great, Patrick. So really, this is sort of a family operation. When you think about all of the pieces of the puzzle, you're the CEO of the farming operation. Also, another piece we'll get to maybe later, where you're also heavy into Loftus Labs. But it's a family oriented operation. Your father is still involved. Your mother's still involved. Your siblings are all involved in one way, shape, or form. And it's been that way. I did the math on this, Patrick. It's been that way for 91 years. Are we in the 91st year?
We are. Yeah. So, it's been, strictly within our family. Loftus Ranches itself, 91 years now. Our board is my nuclear family that I grew up with. So my parents, myself, my siblings, and then my dad's cousin is involved on the fruit side of the business. And so it is truly a family operation. My dad's office is right there. He's still involved. And we manage the business really as a team, but the management team reports to me, and he plays predominantly an advisory role now, which is fantastic. I mean, he came back to the farm in 1974, so almost 50 years ago, and replacing that kind of experience is impossible. So as long as he's willing to come into the office and help out and make contributions, we love having it, and it's a lot of fun to be able to work alongside somebody that I've known and looked up to my entire life. So pretty lucky in that way.
So Patrick, tell me what we need to know about hops.
Hops. It's kind of a funny little industry that has pretty broad reach, right? So depending on who you ask, beer is, if you leaving water aside, like the world's third most popular beverage, maybe behind coffee and tea. Beer would be next. Coca-Cola, falls somewhere behind all the beer in the world. So, and hops essentially have really one main use, and that's as a flavoring ingredient in beer. So historically, if you rewind 800 plus years, hops were used as a preservative in beer. And so there's antimicrobial properties of the hop that help the monks of the early beer brewing days preserve their fermented grain beverages. Of course, the beverage has evolved significantly since then, and now you have some of the most popular beer styles in the United States and in other countries being really hop driven, as opposed to just kind of a preservative, really being a primary differentiator of the beer. And so today now hops provide everything from bitterness to offset the sweetness that comes from the malt, and that's true for everything from your light lagers on up. Without hops, they would be this kind of sweet and not all that enjoyable product. And so bitterness from the hops helps offset that sweetness. Or in something like an IPA, it's also contributing a wide range of flavors and aromas to the beer. And so the Yakima Valley here in the central part of Washington state is the world's leading hop producing region. In this little maybe 50-mile stretch of river valley, on the east side of Washington State, we produce right around 3/4 of the U.S. hop production. And that constitutes, depending on the year and the, yields worldwide, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30% of all the world's hop production comes out of the Yakima Valley. The United States is the world's leading hop producer. Virtually all the hops in the United States are grown here in the Pacific Northwest. Little bit of production in Michigan and kind of around the Great Lakes states, but I think it's somewhere over 98% of the U.S. Crop comes out of Washington, Oregon, Idaho. Germany would be the second leading hop producer, and those two countries together produce right around 3/4 of all the hops in the world. And so we're exporting to every continent that makes beer, which is all the continents. I guess with the exception of Antarctica, nobody's opened a brewery there yet. But with the pace at which breweries are opening, I expect to see one in Antarctica before long. But so it's a tiny little industry in some ways. There's only about 65 to 70 families that grow hops in the Pacific Northwest on about, I think the high watermark for acreage was just over 60,000 acres. So, comparing that to the major commodity crops, 60,000 acres probably seems, like this cute little side project. But it's a big industry here, is really kind of a driver of our regional economy.
That's great. That's a great background on what is hops. That's helpful to us. And why is it grown only in the Yakima Valley practically? This is sort of I know a little bit about this, right? There's a sort of a parallel where you've got to be at a certain sort of parallel in the on the earth, and then they need a certain kind of climate, it seems like, to really get it to grow well. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, exactly. So hops are what's called photoperiodic, and so their growth cycle and their transition from vegetative growth to reproductive growth occurs based on the ratio of daylight hours to night that the plant experiences. Hops are the perennial branch of the cannabis family. And so, cannabis experiences a similar phenomenon. And so anybody that might be familiar with cannabis production, grow lights and things like that. Hops is essentially the same thing. We don't use artificial lighting, but we use the sun. Of course. And so there's a pretty narrow band of latitude, as you alluded to, where the vast majority of the world's hop production occurs in the Northern Hemisphere. And so that tends to be from about 44 degrees north to 51 degrees north. And Yakima is kind of smack dab in the middle of that, right around 46, 47 degrees north here throughout the valley. And so hops and the varieties that we grow then are adapted for that kind of day-night ratio during the main growing season. So, you could pull out a globe and say, well, yeah, there's a lot of land in the world in that band. Why Yakima? Some of it is then some additional kind of nuance of Yakima, and some of it's just the industries tend to consolidate around geographies. And so being in the rain shadow of the Cascades, we are a desert. And so we have among the longest growing seasons in that latitude band in the world, as measured by kind of frost-free days. So long growing seasons, being a desert, big diurnal temperature differences, hot days, cool nights in the summer, and which is really good for plant growth, plant health. Low natural precipitation during the growing season, so less pressure from fungal diseases is kind of the primary driver of hops in the United States. Started in the Northeast, migrated as population migrated west, migrated to the Great Lakes states, then ultimately ended up here in the Northwest. And what they found out 100 and whatever years ago is that this climate is way easier to grow hops than trying to do it, in the Midwest or Northeast, where you've got humidity and 20 inches of rain during the growing season. We get during the kind of main part of the growing season, we might get an inch of rain, but our proximity to the Cascade Mountains and the snow that accumulates there in the winter provides ample irrigation water for us during the growing season, because hops are a water intensive crop to some extent, and so that kind of geographic feature for us of being able to take the snow from the previous winter and irrigate our crops with it here in a desert is great. It allows us to actually settle and farm this part of the world, which otherwise would be, sagebrush.
Right, sagebrush. I've seen some of the sagebrush in the places that don't have the water. I know what I've seen that. So, Patrick, so I want to shift gears a little bit towards this concept around innovation. I know some history around, your farming operation, your family's history, not just farming operation, family's history overall has been sort of embraces innovation. Whether it's about your grandfather building harvesters inside of barns to harvest stuff, you've shown me those to really. I think you and some partners, your father and some partners really began to see an opportunity even in hops to say, this has all been about the bitterness levels for the InBevs of the world, but maybe there's a way to do something with flavor profiles. You started doing innovations in that space. Now, I don't know, you and your partners own the patent how many different of the top, maybe 7 of the top 15 hops in the country, in the world, maybe y'all own the trademarks on. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's pretty close. So of the kind of most popular varieties in the craft brewing industry, for example, Simcoe, Citra, and Mosaic all came out of breeding efforts that are part of our ecosystem. Additionally, Equinox, Laurel, Alice, a handful of others have come out of that program. And so, it's hops are a dioecious plant. So the male and female plants are actually separate organisms. And so we cross them. They reproduce sexually. So the male pollen fertilizes the female cone, which is actually the product that brewers use, is essentially the female reproductive organ of the plant. So in a commercial production sense, we don't want pollination. We don't want fertilization. We don't want male plants anywhere near the fields that we're harvesting for brewing use. But from a breeding and variety development perspective, it's relatively simple process, but then it becomes more complicated as time goes on. And so you just take a male plant and a female plant and put them next to each other, and you get seed. You plant the seed and you start evaluating it, and hopefully over some period of time, usually about 10 years, you'll decide that there might be commercial viability here, but for a variety, say. So we'll start each year. We do a series of crosses, and we'll germinate, in the neighborhood of 50,000 seeds. Each one of those seeds is a genetic individual. Nice thing about sexual reproduction in the plant world, the animal world, whatever you want to refer to, is a huge genetic diversity, right? Look at humans, look at cattle, look at anything that reproduces sexually, and you have, a massive amount of genetic diversity. That presents a lot of opportunity for evaluation. About 45% of the seeds that we germinate will be male. And so unless they are truly exceptional, they're gone. And then over a period of time, we, through agronomic and brewing trials, hope to find out of that 50,000, maybe one or two that have a home in beer somewhere. So it's kind of a, huge game of hop variety survivor. But it has produced some, some varieties that really have played a significant role in driving new and interesting flavor in beer globally. And so that's been fun to see. We started breeding hops in the early 1990s, and it really wasn't until about 2008 or 9 that you could say that we had any kind of commercial success whatsoever. There's some old saying about, an overnight success that took decades. And that's essentially what Simcoe was, is you could look at it now and say, wow, what a success story. And it's like, well, we worked on that variety for like 15 years before, a couple of craft brewers, primarily Russian River Brewing in Santa Rosa, California, decided, hey, this produces some pretty interesting character in beer. We're gonna run with this. And so, it's an example of kind of some innovation and forward thinking. I was a child, so I can't personally take any credit for it. But that we've done over the years, and that idea of like always kind of looking at what's next, being forward looking is a trait that we lean on a lot around here, I guess you could say.
For better. I'm curious about that, Patrick, from the standpoint of so it is sort of a culture of Loftus family ranches, but also interestingly a bit of a culture for your region. Well, I mean, You got a number of partners. You don't do this by yourself. That's 10 years of let's see if something works. But you didn't do it by yourself. You're vertically integrated, I think, into apple packing. You're vertically integrated into marketing of hops. All of this is with partnerships. Tell me a little bit about sort of the community of innovation and partnership. How does that, how does that come along? You help foster that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. It's. I'm glad you asked about it, because certainly this is not a Loftus Ranches thing specifically. Our breeding is done at Yakima Chief Ranches. That's a partnership between ourselves, the Carpenter and Peralt families, and then the Yakima Chief Ranches is partnered up with John I. Hawes in Hop Breeding Company, and so HBC, and then our path to market for all these varieties is Yakima Chief Hops, which is a partnership between 15 hop growing families in Washington and Oregon. About half of that company's production, a little over half that company's production, comes from its ownership, and the balance comes from other independent growers in the region. And so that idea of independence, right, is you see it in farmers all over, right? It's not only hops, it's everywhere. Farmers are an independent bunch. They are a creative problem-solving group. Anybody that's still farming, I don't care what crop it is, anybody that is still farming today, you have won. Over however long you have been farming, you've won, because there have been a lot of farmers in your industry that have gone out of business. There's been a ton of reasons why you could have or maybe should have gone out of business, but you haven't, because you're independent, because you are, thinking, problem solving. You see that in spades across agriculture. In the hop industry, because we are relatively pretty small and generally kind of overlooked, we've had to kind of innovate and solve our own issues, because, big equipment manufacturers don't make hop specific harvesting equipment. I can't go buy a John Deere hop harvester. And, you walk into a hop picker in the Pacific Northwest and it looks like a Rube Goldberg contraption. But it's kind of, it does. It's like, belts and chains and stuff all over the place, and it's obnoxiously loud. But it effectively is like a combine harvester that's been, had the wheels taken off and just kind of exploded into a building, essentially. And we're separating the product, in our case, hop cones, from the biomass, like a combine separates the grain from the waste biomass, depending on the crop. So, but we've just kind of had to innovate and do some of that stuff ourselves, and and find ways to get our product to all the corners of the world. From this, kind of upper left corner of the United States, we're trying to, export hops to, Brazil, New Zealand, Vietnam, all over Europe, Africa.
Yeah.
And so we've had to solve those challenges ourselves in this industry. And I don't know. It's just, it's kind of, I guess, really part of the culture of hop growers. But, industries are sick.
Sort of this necessity is the mother of invention kind of approach, right? Just out of necessity, if for no other reason.
Yep, absolutely. And so, for us, in the Yakima Chief world, we created some of our independence as hop growers to get together and work together. And industries are cyclical, and hops are no different. And so we, after experiencing some rough times, we're stronger together than we are on our own. And so that, but we still exhibit that independence, just kind of as a group now of 15 of the 70 or so hop growers in the United States.
And Patrick, farming is hard. It's always been hard. Lots of things you can't control. But in full disclosure to our audiences, it's been successful. Your ability to create partnerships as a group, your ability to think about innovation, to create these new varieties, in some ways, not by yourself, but in a lot of ways, you are right there in this craft brewing boom, helping create the flavors. In a lot of ways, the Yakima Valley is the mother of the invention of the new craft brewing industry, and it's been pretty successful. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, if hop production in the United States has essentially doubled in the last decade, and the Yakima Valley has gotten its share or more of that growth. That it is a success story. I wish I could take credit for the hop industry of driving that, and we were so smart. But the truth is that it's it's a combination of factors, and arguably the most important factor was the changing consumer preferences in their beer. And so we responded to a shift in consumer preferences, and we did it quickly enough and well enough that we were able to kind of capture virtually all of that demand increase within the existing industry of, say, 2010. While there have been, a few new farms that have started up in the last decade, the vast majority of the increase in production has come from, industry participants that were there 10, 15 years ago, and 40 years ago and 80 years ago. And so, it's a success story, but it's also, right place, right time. It's like, that the idea of like surviving in your industry and just being still in business when something changes. And now what was a really hard, difficult business is still hard, difficult business, but the rewards are a little bit better as well. So that's all right.
Well, I always think about it. Of course, luck is always a big part. I can be a part of this, right, Patrick? But I always think about luck in baseball, right? So you're
Yep.
lucky to hit a baseball because you're lucky to hit it 30% of the time. But if you don't swing, you don't hit it ever. And so taking the swings is a big part of that innovation process. So
Yeah.
you're a bit
No
humble.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to
No
say
one.
y'all were smart enough to know when to take some swings and see if you can get a hit, and you got it. And you've gotten a
Yeah.
couple. That's great.
Yeah. And yeah, taking risks, but also being mindful of what's the existential risk. What's the risk that will, you know, should I be wrong, prevent me from being around for when the, tide starts coming in. So there's, you know, it, business generally, whether you're in agriculture or anything else, is a game of risk management. And, knowing when to swing and what pitches to let go. And so, because yeah, I mean, you swing at everything in the dirt, you're not going to get a hit either. So, there's a balance there, certainly, but you're absolutely right that if you're not missing every once in a while, you're probably not swinging enough. But don't swing at strike three in the dirt.
That's fair. I think that's fair. Patrick, we're running up against time just a little bit, but I want to ask you about the future of Loftus Labs or of Loftus Ranches and where you're going with Loftus Ranches. What do you see as the next swing that needs to be taken? We see a positive future here. We see a tough future. Tell me a bit about what you see in the future.
Yeah, I think generally the hop industry, I would say the next 5 years are probably not going to be as good as the last 10. Just some kind of industry maturation, little bit of changing now consumer preferences, shifting away from beer in some spots. And so for us, always kind of looking at what's next and that, well, hops are our primary business. They're not our only business. And so, as you know, one of the things that we've embarked on is using some of the capabilities that we've built in data and analytics to help other participants in the agriculture industry generally, not just hops and apples, but other crops, other parts of the country, get the most out of their data, their, whatever they have access to help them make better decisions and improve their businesses. And so that's been an exciting project as well. That's now in its, I guess we're over 3 years old, so I guess we're in our 4th year, and really looking at how do we bring some of the tools and techniques that other industries have incorporated? How do we bring those to agriculture and help farmers and other agribusinesses, really get better? Make better decisions. How do we help those decision makers, whatever decision it is that they're making that day, how do we help them make a better decision? And so we've assembled a really great team of 20 now that are, solving challenges from, labor issues in orchards to optimizing apple packing lines to, irrigation and hop drying problems. Really just working with, the prime decision makers at farms and agribusinesses on how to, kind of use their, the data in their world and kind of begin to build a culture of curiosity and continuous improvement in their businesses through the lens of getting more out of the data that they have. I think one of the challenges that we all face now in this modern world is more data than we know what to do with, but a general feeling of I'm not getting all the value out of this that I could. And that's the gap that we're trying to close.
Yeah, so it's interesting, Patrick. It sort of connects to the concept. To me, it connects to the concept. Hey, listen, the next 5 years of the hops industry may not be as good as the last 10. What we got to do is get better at what we currently do, get more efficient, more effective. I happen to know through your early pieces, forays into what's now Loftus Labs, you're describing what was really focused on the farm itself. How do we get the data in the farm itself to do a better job of making decisions to help us be more efficient? And now you're taking that to other companies as well and helping them think through what their data looks like. I always say it's like a pyramid, right? Data and information is sort of the bottom of that pyramid. You got to have the data and the information, but really it's just data and information. Unless you can turn that into knowledge, which there's some of that data and information that can be turned into knowledge, some of it can't. And then from there, you turn that into insights, and from insights, that turned into implications. It's sort of in a pyramid, I think of, and where I believe we are in sort of the evolution in general across the digital framework of agriculture is this: we're moving data and information towards knowledge. We've done a fair amount of that in the Midwest with our yield maps and things like that, but boy, we're still a ways away, still looking for the things you're looking for in Loftus Labs, which is, okay, what are some insights that we can really get from this and say, hey, here's some things that need to be changed, or we could change, or if we pull this lever, we can get this output from it. Those are the sort of things that I see happening, and those are the things you're focused on in Loftus Labs, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you drive your business strategy forward, through better use of the data and information that you have? So, we started, trying to build that capability at Loftus Ranches because we saw that our growth trajectory from a acreage standpoint was, kind of flattening out. And so, in our business, like in most farms, the economic engine is some profitability metric per acre, right? That's what, I don't care if you're a hop grower or a corn grower in Indiana, profit per acre is really kind of the economic engine there. And so for us, it was how do we get more yield, better quality, whatever it is, or drive our cost of production lower per acre. If the acres aren't going up, the profit per acre needs to go up, because our labor costs are going up, our fertilizer costs are going up, our fuel costs are going up, all these costs are going up. So if we don't make any changes and our acreage stays the same, our margins are going to be eroded. And so, some of the questions that we started asking were things like, what variety should we plant on this field, right? Based on the soil profile of this field, what varieties would tend to do better there than others, right? That's stuff that I think you guys in the Midwest have done a lot of, but in hops, we had no idea. We were just taking a variety, planting it in the field, and seeing what happened. And so we've started, doing things like that here, as well as, this is a labor-intensive crop. Our biggest cost by far is labor. And so, driving real-time labor insights closer to the point of decision making, the managers out in the field. Where are the people? What are they doing? Not yesterday, not what did they do last week? What are they doing now? And is that the right thing for that group of 45 people to be doing today? Or should we take some of them and go over here? But if you don't know how many people you have, where they are, or what they're doing, it's really hard to decide what's the thing that they should be doing. And so some of it is just putting the information in the right person's hands at the right time, at the right place. And it might be information that you already have, but it's back in the office. How do we deliver that to the, manager's phone so that when he sees a problem out in the field, he can correct it then, versus when he gets back to the office later that afternoon and probably forgot what it was that he wanted to do. Some of it's just getting the information to somebody in a different way that helps them make that better decision.
Patrick, it's amazing. You were born into a farming family. You've done farming all your life. You've been educated outside the farm in some areas, but when you come back, you go back to farming, and now you're farming data, just like you're farming hops and you're farming apples. That's pretty amazing. Always the farmer, I suppose, even at heart. So, Patrick, let me ask you one last question as we wrap up here. What's today your favorite beer?
Well, I'm irredeemably biased because my siblings are running the brewery on the just around the corner here. Today, my favorite beer is our most recent release at Bale Breaker, and that's Daybreak Pale Ale. Features mosaic hops really heavily in the kind of late hopping and dry hops. So a lot of the flavor and aroma is driven by mosaic, which is one of my favorite hop varieties, both as a farmer and as a beer drinker. It's just an incredibly well done beer. So yeah, kudos to my brother, my brother-in-law, my sister, and the whole team at Bale Breaker for Daybreak, because it's really good. I'll say
Daybreak. I got to take note of that. Daybreak. You know this about me, Patrick. I've talked to you about mosaic since the day I very first tasted it at a brewery in Dallas that focused on that particular hop. And I told you hit a home run with that mosaic, because that is a really good beer. Patrick, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. It's been great to visit with you, learn about hops and about the innovations that happen out in the great Northwest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Allan. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, come back out and see us.